Be our guest, put our podcast to the test. Be our guest, be our guest, be our guest.
Damn, I love that jingle, Chad. Yes, I love that jingle. What a winner. What a winner.
Absolutely. I never thought I'd hear it 3 times within, I suppose, the course of a month. And we've got our third guest today. Very, very excited to hear her. I'm pretty sure every single person listening has loads to learn in the all so important topic that we're discussing today. Barry, why don't you give her a nice introduction?
Definitely. Tonight we have the wonderful Simone Poppleton on the podcast, and she is a registered counselor by profession and a connection coach at heart. So we're going to be chatting about relationships today, and that's something, like Chad says, we could all use a little bit of work on. She graduated with a first-class master's from the University of Cambridge in social and developmental psychology, so amazing academic pedigree, and she now runs her own private practice here in Johannesburg. She spends her time working with couples and individuals to help them experience rich, deep connection in their relationships, and she's also a gifted storyteller, which we love here on Across the Pond. Yeah. She blogs, she does podcasts, she does lots of workshops and lots of online storytelling. So she really is a force to be reckoned with, and we are really excited to have her. So Simone, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Barry. Thank you, Chad. I'm so excited to be here this evening. I'm just excited to share the space with you. You guys are awesome and you're doing such great work. So it's really a privilege. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I think relationships is one of those things where Chad's doing quite well, it seems. I'm not doing as well as I would like. And I think what I really like about your work, Simone, is that I've been following your stuff for a while. And a lot of your work is with women. So a lot of your work is kind of helping empower women, working with women to really become the people they need to be and kind of drive those things. And I feel like the men also need a little bit of help here. I think a lot of the men need to understand how to really empower the women in their lives and kind of move forward and really build powerful, deep, meaningful relationships. So I'm really excited about this one. And I wanted to start just by chatting a little bit through your background. Why did you choose to come into this kind of world? Relationships is a very difficult place to be sometimes. Why did you choose to come into this kind of sphere? And what has been your journey so far?
Oh, I love this work. It really is my heart's work. I'm incredibly passionate about it. I think it was a journey to get to this point. I started quite big picture, wanted to work in the psychology field for kind of the latter part of my life. And then it was a journey. I went to Cambridge and I was really introduced to the world of the social and developmental psychology. I did an internship program in the US for six weeks, and that was about family therapy. And as I started to piece together all of these different parts of psychology, the more I fell in love with just working with couples and working with relationships. I think we're incredibly relational, social beings. I think we were created that way. So for me to be able to work in that sphere feels like I'm working really with the building blocks of, us as people. And I'm fascinated with relationships. I've been in my own, long-term marriage now, but relationship with my high school sweetheart. So it feels like something so core to who I am. I love being in relationship with other people. So it's been a process to get to this point of actually specializing. But I think it really came from a recognition that, we can do lots of counseling in different fields, and many of us are doing incredible work. But I wanted to be very specific, and I wanted to know what I love to do and to create a safe space for people to talk through their relational issues. And initially, I thought it was going to take me a bit of time to, build up my client base and make a name for myself, being quite specialized. But I think that every single one of us find ourselves in wonderful and challenging relationships. We're wounded and healed in our relationships. So I actually have been incredibly blessed and grateful to be doing the work that I love and to really have hit the ground running from the first day I opened my practice. And it's been a great way to build relationships with other people like this. I get to do this work.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
We're really, really happy to have you. Like I said, just before the beginning of the call, I've actually been following you on Instagram for some time. And like you mentioned, that relationship of your own has certainly been inspirational to watch from anyone on the outside. It definitely seems like, one of those that every single person should aspire to. And you guys even got some awards on your wedding as well.
Yes, I say I've been dreaming about my wedding days since I came out of the womb, and even more so when I met Drew. So yes, we met when we were 16, and so it is that high school sweetheart story that I love our story. I'm passionate about our story, and I love to share with people. I'll probably need to stop telling it. So thank you for that encouragement. And yeah, thank you both for following me in that space. It's a space that I always wanted to be very authentic in. So I'm really grateful that's the message.
Fantastic. Let's dig in, Simi. Let's dig into the real meat of the issue. Right now, we are all stuck in quarantine. A lot of us are locked up with our significant others for a much longer period than we used to be locked up with them for.
Yep.
And I've been chatting to a lot of people, and it seems to kind of be make or break. In some instances, it's made people like twice as strong and the relationship twice as strong. In other cases, it's caused a lot of stress and kind of shown some cracks in the system, maybe. So maybe from some of the stories you've been chatting about in your experience, how have you found lockdown? And what are you seeing from the couples that you work with when it comes to how do you deal when you're in each other's space for so much?
It has been an interesting time. I mean, it's unprecedented. It's just a time of immense change and uncertainty. Personally, I've found that it's really gifted us with time. I think that both of us are, quite ambitious in our different careers, and we work very long hours, and we just realized we weren't getting enough time together. And so to actually have this opportunity to just be together and not really have anywhere else to go or be able to do other things. And obviously there's things that we miss, but the real gift has been able to be together. And so that's been a real blessing that I can still work from home and so can Drew. And we've been able to spend really quality, meaningful, intentional time together in just the simpleness of that, enjoying our home really together.
Yep.
And I think that's been the message for many couples. I definitely think it's been a make or break for some in terms of it being challenging and bringing, flaring up stuff in the relationship space. But I must say that for the most part, I found that couples finally got the thing they've been longing for the most, which is that quality time together. I think the biggest challenge was juggling the different roles in one space. So, mom, dad, husband, wife, professionals, whatever career you have, was definitely difficult. And I think my advice and recommendation was always to demarcate space in the home. We do live in a smaller space ourselves, and we needed to find spaces that represented different parts of our identity. And when the laptop closed in one particular part of the house, that was the counter cap off, and I was able to move back into the wife mode. So that was my way of really demarcating boundaries in a small space, and I recommended that actually for all couples.
I think that's a key point there, because one of the things I wanted to discuss was obviously living in London. Everyone here has smaller places. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have this kind of second room that I can escape to and, like you said, have your personal time as well, so that I can actually enjoy that together time that we do get, which we're really lucky to have right now. But yeah, I think those are some really good guidelines that you've given over there. In terms of those who are maybe struggling a little bit more and, who are actually getting on each other's nerves, aside from setting boundaries in terms of space, what kind of other tips or guidelines would you have for them?
Come and see me. Yes, I think, there are some extreme cases where there's just, you've missed each other for so long before lockdown that this really only, amplified that. And sometimes there is a need for professional assistance just to help to cross that bridge again. But for other couples, I think that it is a sense of really inviting a little bit more communication into that space, being able to sit down and actually talk through, almost normalizing. This is difficult. There is change. We are struggling, or we have anxiety. How can we manage this in a way that serves us as individuals and as a couple? So I think the greatest challenge that couples are facing at the moment is how do we exist as both individuals and as a unit or collective in the same space? And really trying to, we juggle that in all aspects of our life normally. This is just the kind of more intense version of that. And so we're trying to create still mystery and distance in our relationships, but also having that kind of closeness and intimacy. And so it really is kind of navigating how the self and the other in one space. And the most effective way to do that is to talk about it.
Absolutely. It was a bit of a joke that, in terms of come see me, but I think that's an important thing as well, because I think for a long time, society, back in the day, there's been a bit of a stigma about, getting counseling. And I suppose I love the fact that you focus on couples rather than just being like a marriage counselor. So what is that change that you're seeing in the space, and why is it becoming more okay and, more necessary for a lot more people to go and see a counselor?
Yeah, I think that there is this move there, towards it just being more socially acceptable. And I'm so happy about that, because I've always said that I'm not a problem-focused therapist. I'm very much about the process, about connection. So whether you're in a great space or in a really difficult space, my space is for you, because it's not just for couples who are having difficulty. It's couples who just want to deepen what's already working for them as well. And what I really appreciate, Mary, what you were saying is I absolutely love working with women, for sure. I've tried to create a safe space for them, but I actually find that I have many individuals who are male who come for therapy, and I'm so encouraged by that. There's just this real desire in them for change and for growth, and it's so fulfilling when you see them take the tools that they're learning and really putting that into their relationships or into their individual lives. And I'm so thrilled that people are actually seeing counseling as something valuable, no matter what season of life you're in, whether you just got married, whether you're a veteran in it. I think there's really something valuable about self-improvement. How can I be better tomorrow than I am today?
Sure.
I think it's a great trend. It's really heartening to hear that. I think that I've had a lot of conversations. We chatted a lot about mental health on this podcast, and about how men in general struggle to share emotional things, or struggle to share when they're having difficulty or when they're going through difficult times. And this idea of going to a third party who's objective and kind of look at it with a new set of eyes and give you some different things to think about, maybe some exercises to work through, that is incredibly valuable. And I think for all of us, all our listeners, all of us going through difficult things, I think everyone's had a tough lockdown in some way. Yeah. And it's talking to people in these sorts of scenarios, like trained professionals who know what they're talking about and know how to help, is really super powerful. And if we can get past that stigma, get more people to be willing to take that first step, I think they'll be able to see the value that you're speaking about, and hopefully will start to change some of their lives. So I'm very heartened to hear that, and I hope we see more and more people go to these sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Because it is so valuable, right? As you say, we are relational-based beings. We are very, very social, and our social relationships really dictate how we experience the world. You can have the most amazing career, you can have all the money in the bank, you can have the cars and the house and all of that good stuff, but if your relationships aren't strong, you're simply not going to be leading a fulfilling life. And so I'm really heartened by that. I'd like to encourage everyone listening that this is a really important avenue if you are struggling right now. Simi, talking about some of these things, and you've obviously seen the good, bad, and the ugly when it comes to these stuff. What are some of the common mistakes you're seeing in couples that are making today? So like the major mistakes that keep coming up again and again and again.
I think something that you're really speaking into, Barry, was something that Esther Perel speaks about. She says the quality of our life is based on the quality of our relationships. And so I think that the thing that couples are really struggling with is time. I think that we have incredibly fast-paced lives. We have so many demands in our time. And I think that that's the problem that most couples are facing when they come into my room, is not that there isn't a desire to be intimate or connected or close to one another, but just not enough time. And there are so many competing demands. And unfortunately, the relationship often takes that back seat when, whether it's parenting, whether it's work, whether it's other family responsibilities. And now you're adding financial pressures in our lockdown and quarantine times. So I think that a huge challenge in our 21st century effectively is just the lack of time that couples have to spend together. And as a result of that, it means that they're not able to work through challenges that they're facing, or sit down and have those meaningful, conversations, or grow their friendship. I think that friendship is such a key part of our relationships, of our coupleships, and a sense of being able to actually have time to do shared activities together. That's what builds things like friendship. So it's always going back to that element for me. And I think that's why I speak to it being so valuable for Drew and I, is that it has just been this gift of time. And not that there was never this willingness, but just, in your schedule, you can't create more time. And it becomes quite frustrating for couples who so desire more depth to their relationships.
Absolutely, and an ever so important thing, that time. In terms of how you've adapted to this quarantine time, have you started taking consultations on Zoom, and how has that been going? Do you feel as connected with your clients?
That's such a good question. So before lockdown started, I was already doing online sessions with just some clients overseas. And so it was a really seamless process to just convert those that were willing to come onto online and to use Zoom. And I'm incredibly grateful for a platform like this. Firstly, we're meeting this way, and I love it. I've always valued that about, your relationship, is that you're meeting across the pond. And I think that that's really cool. And in terms of my work, I'm very grateful that so many clients entrusted me to still maintain and hold that safe space for them, in this platform. it is difficult because we're inviting, essentially they're inviting me into their intimate spaces, their home, and I'm inviting them into mine. And so just maintaining some of those boundaries became very important. But I'm really, really grateful that many clients were able and willing to really come online onto Zoom, and I've continued counseling that way. Some people prefer in-person sessions, and so I'll do a phased approach just to, reinvite that into my work. But in terms of connection, it's funny how technology works. Before, coronavirus, we would have said that we've never been more disconnected, because of our technology. People can't put their phones down. That's, a huge challenge that couples were facing, is spending so much time on their phones.
Yeah.
And yet now it's really the only thing that connects us to people outside of our home space. And so that's been a very interesting dynamic, is obviously being in my home space, doing all of my work on my cell phone. And that for Drew and I has been something to navigate, because now all we do is stare at a phone all day, or a laptop all day. And how do we switch off from that mode back into kind of real life and connect with the people still within your home? So I think there's still those challenges there. But for the most part, in terms of my counseling, I hope that I've still managed to create a space that felt the same as in person. I tried to be the same as I would be in person. Obviously, there's some challenges, but for the most part, I found that it's been quite seamless.
That's actually a perfect segue to the question I wanted to ask next, and that's about the impact of the smartphone. I think the smartphone has come into all of our lives, and it's stealing attention and focus and time from us every single moment of the day. And what we chatted offline, Samir, is about the value of like tradition and ritual to try and win back some of that time between your significant other, and creating rituals and traditions where you can put the phone away for a little bit and do something, a shared activity of some sort. Can you talk to that and how valuable those rituals are when you're trying to create time for that significant other in a very, very pressurized environment?
Absolutely. So there was this quote that I really loved. It's from Vincent van Gogh, and he says, "Great things are done by a series of small things brought together." And I think that's effectively what a tradition or ritual really is in a relationship. And when we think of rituals especially, but even traditions, we think of big things, right? We're thinking birthdays, we're thinking Christmas, and what's your, the traditions that you implement in those spaces. But for me, it's really about the daily things. It's the small things often, just the little ways in which you connect and turn toward one another in your day. And that's really where there's so much power. Dr. Gottman, he's the father of psychology, and he's looked at a number of different qualities that successful relationships have. And one of the main ones is that there is a shared meaning between them. And how do you create that? Through rituals, just big and small things that you do to really say, I can count on you in this. And I love rituals because they create a sense of continuity. They create legacy, which I really appreciate. They create stability, predictability in a relationship. It is that sense of, I can count on you. And rituals is really where the sense of memory making is created, and friendships are fostered. And if we think about probably each one of us, if we think of our childhood experiences, there are key traditions or memories that we hold close to our heart, whether it is holidays or maybe it was something really special that was done, little notes in your lunchbox, whatever it was, just little things that were done within your family space. And I think it's important as couples to actually look at what were the things, that the traditions, the rituals that we had in our family home. What do we like about them? What didn't we like so much? And what are the new ones we want to create together? And I think there's so much value in just those small things often.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think you're so right, especially when it comes to this time discussion that we were having earlier. And especially now that we're all working from home, it's actually really, really quick and easy to, just look across the table and say something nice, instead of just using that excuse of time. I think if we kind of look at all of those tiny little opportunities and value them a lot more than we currently do, we can definitely make a much bigger impact. While we were chatting earlier on about the importance of coming to see a counselor, I wanted to really just probe and ask how much damage unresolved issues can have in years time, so a decade later. What is your experience on that front?
It is very destructive. It actually makes my heart incredibly sore when I think of couples who've waited so long to seek help and assistance, possibly because of shame, because of stigma, or just because life got in the way. And that's often the thing that happens the most. That's why small things often is powerful, because it's those little things that keep you connected day to day. And if you miss one, that's okay. But when you're missing them repeatedly, day after day, you find that there's so much lost between you, that connection, that friendship. And so what ends up festering in that space is an immense amount of resentment. You find that for women, there's a sense of feeling unloved in that space. They often find that they're not seen or appreciated. For men, it's this feeling of angst or irritability or not being valued or their opinions mattering. This kind of the household could run without me feeling. And so over time, that really manifests itself with immense disconnection. But the way that I like to see it is disconnection is what we feel, and it's the best way to describe that feeling between a couple. That relational space is what I call it. But actually, we'll just lose access to our connection. And I think that's so much more positive and empowering to know that we might have just lost some access to connection, but with some tools, with intervention, we're able to re-access that connection again.
Fantastic. That is a really, really good summary. And I think that it's on all of us to really work on these things going forward, right? I think that as life starts to go back to normal, we start to kind of lean back into our old habits and our old ways of doing things. It's important that we reflect on some of the learnings we've had during this process and all the time we spent with people in our homes and really carry that forward into starting new habits. I mean, you chatted about how difficult it is to change your habitual behavior. And it's those little things every single day that really make the difference. So if you were giving some advice to someone who's going to go from a lockdown situation where you're in each other's space 24/7 and you've enjoyed all of this time, and then you're going to start trying to go back to whatever normal life is post this pandemic, what advice would you give to someone to try and keep that magic and that time alive as things start to get more and more hectic?
That's a really good question, Barry, because I think that's probably the thing that couples are finding a little bit anxiety provoking is that reclimatizing to life a little bit back to what was normal. But some couples don't want to go back to that total normal anymore. They've enjoyed this time. And I think that there's something really important about being able to almost acknowledge that firstly, very much like you were saying, actually look at lockdown and assess it and review it and say, what did we like about it? What are the boundaries that were almost imposed on us? Now those are going to be taken away. But what boundaries do we want to reinforce in our relationship going forward that work for us? So whether it's, special time together, date night, etc. So I think it's very important that couples sit down and actually assess that almost properly, formally almost is the best word to say. And then there's something that Dr. Gottman refers to that I find really powerful that I often recommend for couples as well. And it's this idea of the 5-hour segment in a week. So in other words, spending 5 meaningful hours in your week is really powerful for maintaining that connection and that idea of the small things often. So the way that couples can incorporate these hours is through something like the way that you part ways in the morning. So whether it's a kiss, whether it's a hug, some kind of acknowledgement of you're leaving my space is really important. The next part would be something like the way that you reunite. So at the end of the day, when whoever's coming back into that space, do you put down what you were doing and really welcome them back in? Do you acknowledge them when you come through the door? Or are you just so busy and frazzled by your day? But really taking time to see them and say, I'm back with you now. The other way is through affirmations and appreciations. 2 a day of I really appreciate this. I really admire this about you. Not just the things they do, but let's try also focus on who they are as people. I think that's a really simple, small thing, very much like you were saying, Chad. Look across the table and say, oh, I saw that you did that today. I appreciate that. Through affection, that's a really, really great way to maintain that connection once people come back together. Of just a hug, a touch. It says, I see you, I'm here with you. And then some kind of weekly date or weekly activity. I think it's really important for couples to have some kind of shared project or activity that they're doing together. And that just gives you something to look forward to. It doesn't have to be a big thing. For Drew and I, it might be a run in the morning and then we grab a cup of coffee from Furnos and then we start our day. And it's so sweet and so simple, but it really just helps to set the tone effectively for the day. So it's just these small things that don't even take 5 minutes to just say, I see you. And it really helps that partnership to grow and that friendship to foster.
That is amazing practical advice that I think every single person listening here is going to take a lot away from. One of the other things I wanted to just chat about is obviously as we have gone into this lockdown period, a lot of people have not been partnered up and they've, I suppose, used this period to maybe even put more emphasis on that fact and, maybe become a bit more anxious about it. But for those who are still looking for real love and looking for their best kind of match. What kind of practical advice would you have for those people in, maybe not overthinking it too much, but what kind of things should they be looking for in these kind of dating apps to really find their person?
Yeah, that's been a very interesting aspect for many people who are single. And I think what's really important about this is that it's just redefining the ways in which we get to know people. I think that there is still so much value in just going for it. I think we often hold ourselves back and we, have this maybe idea or ideal of how we'd like to meet somebody. And, during lockdown, that becomes a bit more difficult when we can't engage in social gatherings or go to restaurants. And I don't think that that should get in the way of people meeting, because there is something about this platform where you can only see kind of this much of a person over Zoom or, whatever video. It really requires you to listen quite intently, because it does require a lot of energy in that space. It means you have to be a lot more thoughtful about your questions, because you can't rely on your environment to, foster conversation. So it actually is a great opportunity to take away the trimmings, the extras of dates, and just get to know the person across from the screen. And so for me, I think that it's actually been a great way for people to get to know the person, not just the perfect date or all those other lovely parts of dates. And then in terms of going on to dating apps, I think it's really about authenticity.
Yeah.
I think that you ultimately are going to track what you're putting out into that space. And even across Zoom, there is something called the relational space. What I put into the space, the person on the other side is going to respond to. So if you're looking for love and you're looking for something that's a bit more long lasting, then say that. I think it's so important that people are owning that space differently. Tinder gets a bad rep at times, but it's also about how people are engaging and using it. So I think that it's really about you saying, I'm showing up in that space authentically. And you may find some people that aren't, but I'm sure that you will find that others will. It'll be a breath of fresh air.
That is amazing. Simone, thank you so much for sharing this space with us tonight. We really appreciate you coming on the show. For everyone who's listening and might want to go check out Simone, she's amazing online. Her counseling stuff is all at rootedinlove.co.za, and her personal blog and her podcast, you can find it at simonepoppleton.blog. I'll put all those links in the description below, so you can just go and click on them. Please reach out to her if you are in need, if you are struggling right now, if you feel like you need to talk to somebody. She really is incredible at what she does, and it really is a super valuable thing earlier rather than later. Simone, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you both so much. This was so much fun, and I hope to do it again soon. Thank you.
Absolutely loved having you. And what a great guest segment there.
Across the pond with Barry and Chad.